everybody, welcome back to the shop. We have an interesting little project here tonight. Now this isn't a gigantic project, but this is a one videoer, but I think it's interesting with a good story, so I think you'll enjoy coming along for the ride. So what you see before you are the remnants of one blown up transaxle transmission out of a tractor, a small tractor. This transaxle belongs to the transmission in my kid's competition tractor pulling tractor. Now the story behind this is when my oldest son was 2 years old, he said, "Daddy, I want to do that. I want a tractor pull." So, you know, what well-respecting redneck father with a shop isn't going to build his son the coolest pulling tractor he can possibly build him? So fast forward 6 years, 2 more sons, and a whole room full of trophies later, and we have one broken transaxle. So here's the other problem. My kid's favorite tractor pull of the season is coming up this coming weekend on Saturday. The parts won't be here until Friday, so I've got to rebuild this entire transmission, put it back in the tractor, get everything operating, tuned up, working again, load it on the trailer and ready to go. Here's the failure. It broke right here. Now, this part is part of the differential main carrier, much like in a rear end of a Chevrolet car or a Ford truck or whatever. This is driven by this mushroom gear. They call this the mushroom gear. It's driven here and it drives the axles. This part broke, and the reason this part broke is this bearing was completely trashed, as well as the bearing that went on this side. This isn't that bearing. That allowed this gear under gear force to try to walk back, and it flexed the axles in there enough that it broke it off. Now, here comes the rub. This bearing that fits on here and on here is no longer manufactured. And when I mean no longer manufactured, I don't mean that the wheel horse company that originally manufactured this transaxle doesn't make it or sell it anymore. I mean the bearing company stopped making this bearing. You can't find them. And I heard through the grapevine that a gentleman convinced the bearing company to do a short run of these bearings because there is a demand for them still. I've been told the bearings are available in that short run, but they're like a couple $100 a bearing. I need 2 of them. So on this fireman's salary, we're not going to use those bearings. I went to my local Motion Industries, which is a bearing supplier here, and I said, "Can you give me a bearing that size?" And he measured it and looked in all his books and computers and scratched his head, turned around, did the hokey pokey dance, and he said, "They don't make that bearing anymore." We already knew that. I said, "Can you get me close?" Because my original thought with this was to take this transaxle case and bore this hole right here just out bigger for a bigger bearing. This size ID, the bearing is so big that to get this inside diameter here that I need, it would bore out too much material and the transaxle would become weak. So what I can find is a bearing that's 1/8 of an inch wider and 1/16 on each side, or 1/8 total, smaller. Now, this piece doesn't take any load other than the gear load. So I feel like if I've got to cheat the devil just a little bit to make this work, I'm going to cheat the 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 off each side of this right here. I've also got to cut this land back 1/8 of an inch because the new bearings are just slightly wider. All right, so we've got it back over here in the lathe. What I'm going to do is turn the lathe on and I'm going to cut it true, and from that trueness I'm going to start taking some measurements. Okay, so we've got it true and round. Let's see where we're at just to give us a rough idea here. Quite a bit to take off. We can take probably 70 thou off it before we start sneaking up on it. So let's do that. So we got about 38 and a half thousand to still go. So we'll take another 25. Probably just a little more than 25 on this pass, but that'll be fine. The lathe still holds true. That's pretty impressive. So we know that we need 3750, or we need to take 25 thousandths more off. Now we're going to hold this operation for a minute and I'll explain to you why. We got to cut this back just a little bit. It's not a lot. And so what I'm going to do is, because I'm taking so little off on a plunge cut, and then I'm just going to run the machine in and let it shave it all the way off till I get to this diameter. Then I'll run my last 25 thousandths off there, so the part that I cut off here, this part to bring our bore depth down, equals out. The surface is all equal. There's nothing to catch the bearing when it slides on. So we'll finish that out in a couple of passes. Now, something interesting about my lathe is my lathe, it reads the diameter, not the radius. which is backwards from what a lot of machinists are used to. So if I want to take 10,000ths off, I just dial in 10,000ths. And it's a little bit confusing to go to somebody else's machine and then come back to this one. Once you get used to doing it one way, you got to make sure you get it right in your mind. Otherwise, you wind up taking too much off, which the first few times I used this lathe, I wound up taking a lot too much off, and I couldn't figure out why. Well, that's just about perfect. Let's get everything out of the way. We'll take a file, we'll break these edges off so the edges are nice and soft. This tool I'm using has a rounded corner, so it's placed a rounded corner here. I would like a little bit more radius in here, but I don't have a carbide insert that does it, and I like the way this particular carbide insert cuts this cast. It just cuts real nice. Here's where we're at. This is the part that we broke right here. As you can see, it's done busted. There's no fixing that. It's gone. Some spare parts that I had some spare transmissions. We undercut this, so we're undercut, and we'll get a bearing. This bearing has come with seals in it. So what I'll do is I'll pop the seal out of it, that way the lubricating oil can get in there, but we'll do that on final assembly. But there you go. You know, Bob's your uncle. Nice fit. You know, it's loose enough that I can slip the differential into each half, but not so loose that you know, it moves any once it's in place. All the rest of the bearings are here for this transmission. There's quite a few of them. The bearings and seals. I mean, I've got like, I don't know, 15 maybe 20 bearings and seals to put this thing back together. So I built this tractor for my son when he was 3 because of his love of all things tractor. Well, now he's almost 9 years old, and we've done 6 full pulling seasons with it. And we've really enjoyed doing this sport with the kids because it teaches family values, sportsmanship, and teamwork. Now, as you can see, we've amassed some awards over the years, and this tractor's been really good to us and really good to the kids. It's been a winner, but not always, and we feel like that's a really important thing for the kids to learn, that you don't always win a trophy, but you always try your hardest. I hope you've enjoyed watching this repair video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you real soon. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed what you saw here today. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and like us on Facebook. Please, somewhere down below here is a link. See you soon.